start. We're not going to do the countdown.
Okay, cool. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see big crowd. Welcome back to San Jose. I see some new faces here as well. That's great. So we have Campus of the Future session. When I think about Campus of the Future, what do I really think about? Is this a building? Is this a campus as we used to see as campus? When I think about Campus of the Future, I see and I think a campus that's where I am. It's everywhere. When I think about Campus of the Future, I think wireless first. Pretty much everything is wireless. When I think Campus of the Future, I think my applications are in the cloud. When I think Campus of the Future, I see a campus that is adapting to the conditions, adapting to the environment, very customizable, based on the data that is being driven by the infrastructure, by the network, and fed into the different tools that we have. Campus of the Future is driven by the new trends and technologies that are evolving. And subsequently, they are driving new requirements for the networks. And that's what we are going to talk about in Campus of the Future. If you look at the different trends that we have in the market today, one of the very prominent trends is the cloud. It's all kinds of clouds. It's the public cloud, it's the private cloud, it's the hybrid cloud. I used to be a very heavy user of Microsoft Excel sheet. Most of my Excel sheets are now on Smart Sheets. Most of my files are on box folders. I'm pretty sure you guys are experiencing the same thing. We are also seeing new technologies in the video space. A few years back, we were talking about full HD. We started looking at 4K videos. And now we are hearing about 8K videos. In fact, there are two broadcasters in the world, one in Japan and one in Europe, who are actually broadcasting 8K videos today. And what really happens when you go to 8K videos? Your amount of pixels exponentially increase. And that shows up in the amount of storage that you are going to have. It used to be a few hundred gigs of storage. Is going into multiple terabytes of storage, right? That's the change that you see with the 8K video and 4K video. What that really means for the network, though, when you have really heavy video in your network, they are going to move from one place to another place. You have to broadcast it. You have to put it on the network. So the requirements for the network change as well. It's no more the 20 Mbps requirement anymore on the wireless. It's going a lot more. It's becoming 200 megabits per second requirement with multiple concurrent users at the same time, with much more deterministic behavior in the network. And that really drives new applications as well. That could be your HoloLens that some doctor is trying out today for live X-ray. That could be a virtual reality that a real estate agent is using for their clients and customers to show them the experience of the real estate property. And that could be someone in this room looking at his phone and collecting Pokemon treasures. Okay? These applications have new requirements. These are very latency-sensitive applications. These are very bandwidth-savvy, bandwidth-hungry applications, very compute-intensive. At the other end, we are also seeing a lot of devices exploding in our networks. These are driven by Internet of Things. These are all kinds of things that are joining our network. In fact, the stats show that by year 2020, we are going to have 50 billion devices connected to the network. That's a lot of devices. That's a humongous amount of increase in the amount of devices that we have today. And as IoT evolves, so does the different protocols and technologies. So there are new protocols that we are seeing in the network today. We are seeing Zigbee, Thread. We are seeing WPAN. There are tons of them. It's not a few, because this field is still evolving. So we don't know exactly where this is going to go, but our networks have to be ready to adapt to the new technologies and new protocols that are going to evolve over time. In fact, based on some stats, these new emerging protocols will become 60% on the IoT devices. And those 60% of the devices, that means, might not be Wi-Fi anymore. At the same time, Wi-Fi has evolved a lot. And we are seeing Wi-Fi 6, which is the 802.11ax standard. This standard is much more than just the speed and feed. It's much more than performance. It's more about deterministic behavior. It's more about immersive experience on the Wi-Fi that makes all those different applications that we have talked about a reality on the Wi-Fi network. And we are going to talk about more on the Wi-Fi 6 and rest of the wireless topics tomorrow morning. So what does this really mean for campus of the future? It means new set of requirements that we have to be ready with, our networks have to be ready with. So from connectivity perspective, our requirements are no more a latency of a second. It's less than 100 milliseconds. Our bandwidth requirement is no more at 20 megabits per second. It's going up to 200 megabits per second to enjoy the immersive experience, which will become an expectation for the users. So you really have to design your network for the performance and predictability in the network. At the same time, when additional devices come into your network, what really happens? Security, top of mind for everyone, right? And with billions of devices joining your network, you don't want to have a flat network with everyone in the same segment. You have to segment the network in a proper way. You have to keep your IoT devices that do not have a lot of CPU to run the antiviruses in a separate segment. You want to have a segment for building management system devices, right? And on top of that, you need to have proper security mechanisms that gives you end-to-end policy and security. So you have to design your network for end-to-end security on your campus of the future. Now, the campus of the future is really dependent on the data that is being driven by the network. To look at the data and respond to that data is an essential part of campus of the future. So when you are designing your network, you need to have the applications that can collect the data and that can act on that data. That's an essential part of campus of the future. And by the way, the high availability that used to be multiple nines, the high availability requirement is very simple now. It's always on, right? Nobody wants to have a downtime anymore. Your network has to be available all the time. And as you go and build your campus of the future networks, you really have to think about how I can make this network an always-on network. To get to all of these requirements, you really have to think full stack. You cannot just go and design your network switch by switch and a router by router and an access point by access point. That used to be the campus of the past. What you really have to think about is how I can build a network that is campus of the future, that really starts from an application that can monitor my network, that can orchestrate my network, all the way down to the infrastructure. So you have to have a network that is driven by a single pane of glass that can orchestrate and automate your entire network infrastructure. You need to have a segmented, end-to-end, secure network that is supported by the infrastructure that is lying underneath. And for that, we have campus of the future that really starts from the Cisco DNA Center, which is your single pane of glass, which provides you the automation and assurance. And that's what we are going to dive in right after this. We are going to talk about the scalability improvements that we have done in the Cisco DNA Center. We'll talk about some of the high availability features that we have added in the Cisco DNA Center. And as technology evolves, machine learning and other technologies that we are integrating in our solutions, we'll talk about that as well. Later in the afternoon, from 3:45 to 5:15, we are going to talk about software-defined access. We are going to talk about extranet that Carl mentioned earlier. We are also going to talk about the policy and how we can have a better user experience when we are working with ICE and device profiling. And tomorrow morning, we are going to talk about the end-to-end intent-based infrastructure at 8 o'clock, 8 to 9:30. And that's where we are going to talk about a few things that we are introducing. On the access point side, the Catalyst 9100s, and the one thing that you have been waiting for a long time, the Catalyst 9600. And we are also going to talk about data and analytics and its value as it comes from the intent-based infrastructure. With that, I'm going to give it to Bipin, who is going to start with our first section, which is the Cisco DNA Center.
Thanks, Mohammed. Okay, just a little afternoon quiz to wake you up in case. So any guesses how many DNS Center releases have we had so far? Any numbers from the audience? What is that? Everything, all DNS Center releases. Okay, I'll cut through the chase. We've actually had 17 releases and still counting. Now, why is this number important? It's not so much about whether we did how many feature releases versus patch releases, but if you just step back and think about it, it's really about the transition that this company is going through, which is software, the transition to a software-first company. It's about the power of agile development. It's about a continuous software delivery model. So, while we still have our work cut out for us, we are aware of all the things we have to do, but we're still excited about where we are in Cisco DNA Center today. We are more excited about some of the innovations that we are working on, which will ultimately deliver the outcomes of the business of the campus of future that Mohammed just talked about. Let me just spend a few moments talking through some of these. Now, as more and more wireless users join the network, as more wireless devices get onboarded into the campus of the future, we need a better way of classifying them. We need a better way of device classification. So with a mobile-first approach, we are looking at using machine learning for device classification services on the DNA Center platform. Then, as the campus of future evolves into the cloud, as your applications run into the cloud, you need one consistent policy to tie ACI, SD-Access, SD-WAN, Meraki, everything together. So that is where multi-domain policy is an innovation. It's an innovation stream that we're working on that we're fairly excited about. In terms of cloud delivery models, so as you recall, when we first launched Cisco DNA Center, we started with a cloud catalog, which means that the cloud was the primary place to get any updates on either patches or on new software releases. We augmented that with telemetry, where we could collect some customer data and use that to better the product. Right now, we are experimenting with using the cloud as a compute platform, whereby we could build machine learning models where we learn from the data from several customer networks, of course, in an anonymized fashion, and then use the compute power of the cloud to evolve those models, learn about the behavior of networks and how assurance can help, for example, and then bring that learning back to our on-prem models. So that's what we're doing on the cloud side. And finally, with Cisco DNA Center, we changed the game in the industry by moving from a pure SNMP-driven, a traps or events-based approach to an insights-based approach, which was really Cisco DNA Assurance, which proactively prevents problems before they happen. So that's, of course, a continuous innovation that we've been working through since we launched the product. Now, while all these transitions are going through in the networks, and I hope this is something you all can relate to, the networks are inherently becoming costlier and complex to operate. Now, why is that so? Because there is no standardization of tools. Even the biggest enterprises use disparate tools, oftentimes to just manage one-off tasks. And also, there's still a lot of manual intervention, which obviously adds to the cost. It should not come as a surprise to you that enterprises are spending 3 times the amount of money that they actually use to build the networks, 3 times the amount of money to operate the networks than they actually spend in building them. So reducing this cost and complexity is going to be fundamental to achieve the outcomes of the business, the campus of future. So what do we have for doing that? Of course, automation is the answer. Through zero-touch provisioning and also near zero-time software updates, you can actually eliminate manual intervention. You can make them less error-prone, and that will reduce cost. With assurance, you get far better visibility into what's going on in the network. It brings the power of correlation to look at multiple events at the same time and give you a more correlated picture of what's going on. So those deeper insights can proactively prevent problems before they happen. And then finally, the power of policy and segmentation, where you can basically decouple the users from the infrastructure. So access policy changes for users on a day-to-day basis, they become more seamless and ultimately reduce the cost. So with all this in mind, what do we have for you over the next 45 minutes? I think scale is something that's on top of your minds. You heard Mohammed also allude to it. So we're going to spend some good amount of time in seeing how we are evolving DNA Center for scale. Programmability and all the API innovations, very important. I think that's really where you have a lot of power to create services for your customers and also earn additional revenue. And then, of course, we'll go through all the automation and assurance innovations in the works and finally end with a call to action and resources. Now, before we even talk about evolving the DNA Center for the campus of the future, the one thing that is really important is the install experience. And I know there's a lot of opinions and feedback around the install process. And this is something that we've been working on with a lot of focus in a very continuous fashion. So I'm going to invite Saurabh Prasad, our principal TME on DNA Center, to walk us through a new web-based install that we are about to bring to market with Cisco DNA Center 1.3. And then Saurabh will also talk about evolving for scale.
So let's go right to a demo. So most of you must have, or some of you must have done the install of DNA Center. So the day 0 install of DNA Center today is using the configuration wizard. That is a text-based wizard that we have. It works, but we always want to improve it. And so what we're doing is we're actually giving you a web-based install, which will allow you to configure the DNA Center. And this is more from a IP addressing, subnets, IP routes, NTP server, DNS server, all of that from a day 0 perspective. So this is the web-based console. What you see here is the backplane of the DNA Center appliance. This is the generation 2 appliance, so the DN2 appliances. This is not the DN1 appliance. And what you will see is the 4 10-gig ports on the backplane. And this has pretty much the same functionality that we have with the configuration wizard. Of course, we can give much more help and online help and documentation on the web-based consoles. So you have two options. You can create a single node cluster, or this is the first install, or you could add a node to an existing DNS Center cluster. So let's start. And what you'll see here is going to walk you through each and every interface on the DNS Center. So the first one is the enterprise network, which is what you use to talk to your network devices. You have to provide the IP addresses, the subnet, the gateway, DNS, and all of the other good configuration that is required. If you want to add some static routes, you can do that here as well. We can keep walking through each and every interface of this appliance. And if you don't want to configure them, it's up to you. You can completely skip it. Now, this is a demo server, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go through it this fast. And so we went through the enterprise network, the management network, the internet access. So this is where you access the cloud gateway for DNS Center, and the last one will be for the intra-cluster link. So this is what you use to talk to with the various nodes in the DNS Center cluster. Once you are done with all of the interface configuration, and this is where we are going to ask you all the other details on what is the subnet, what are the credentials, and if you want to add an HTTPS proxy, so for you to reach to the Cisco backend or to the cloud gateway for DNS Center, such that it can see all of the catalog and the updates for DNS Center. If you have a proxy server, you can provide all the information here, and you can see the credentials. So this is for the Linux credentials, the maglev credentials. So if you want to access the Linux interface and also the admin credentials, so they need to be provided here as well. I mean, it's the same as what you have on the configuration wizard with the existing DNS Center appliances. And once you go next, this is where we are almost done. You can see what are the ports that you need to open up, because some of these ports will need to be opened up on your firewalls or whatever other systems you have, such that the DNS Center can operate as expected. Once we are through with all of this, you click on the install page, and this is where the install is going to start. Now, this is where, like, traditionally this has taken 3 to 4 hours. In the very early releases of DNS Center, this could take as high as 7 to 8 hours. With the newer releases of DNS Center, you might have noticed this, we have actually brought it down to less than 2 hours. So for installing your DNS Center from scratch, it takes less than 2 hours. Again, there's ways to go. We will keep on improving. But as of now, this is close to 2 hours. You can see the logs here as well. So if you want to see what's going on with the logs, you can see right here. You don't have to go to the console or to the Linux console to see what's going on with the install process. So now let's go back to the slides. And if I can find the slide here. Okay. So we just saw the demo of the web-based install. This is going to be available with the 1.3 release of DNS Center. And also we have done some user surveys with this. And this is with a group of 25 customers, which our user experience team has talked to. And the ease of use has gone up from 3.9 out of 7 all the way to 6.5 out of 7. So you can see we are putting in a lot of online help, a lot of tutorial help. So if you want to get started with this, it's much more easier rather than having to go through all of that documentation guides that we have. So that's the web-based install and the install experience of DNS Center. Now let's talk about scale. Now I know this is top of mind for a lot of people. How do we scale with the DNS Center? And we are really approaching it from 3 different angles. The first one is to give you larger appliances with more scale, and we will talk about that in much more detail. And with the largest appliance, we can go all the way up to 100,000 clients. And this is going to be, most of those appliances are orderable. There is some which is going to be orderable very soon. And with the 1.3 release, you'll start seeing the full benefits of the DNS Center with these appliances. The next part is also looking at it from a holistic picture, because the DNS Center is not the only system out there. We have systems like ICE and some other systems. So how do we scale with respect to those other systems? So we are looking at doing the integration with multiple DNS centers with a single ICE, or having an integration between DNS Center and multiple ICE cubes. Those are all in the works right now, and we are planning to add that support soon. And the last piece is DMS. So this is the DNS Center management system, where you will be able to have multiple DNS centers across different sites and then have a single point of control, and which we call DMS. So this is how we are planning to address the scale requirements for DNS center. Now, all of this is not available today. As I said, the appliances will be available shortly. In fact, the DN2 entry-level appliance and the mid-size appliance is already orderable. So you can go and order those appliances, and you'll start to see the most benefit of those appliances with respect to scale from the 1.3 release onwards. The DN2 large appliance, which will have support for 100,000 clients, that should be orderable very soon, or maybe it's already orderable. I haven't checked recently, but that should be orderable very soon. Again, all of this will be supported with the 1.3 release. The entry-level appliance is already out there and should be supported from 1.2.8 release onwards. Just a quick note, so if you want to do an HA, or if you want to form an HA cluster with 3 nodes, you can with the DN2 entry appliance and the DN1 appliance. So this is the previous appliance or the older appliance that we have for DNS Center. So you can form HA clusters as long as they are running the same software version. You will be able to form those clusters. Again, when you're looking at scale, it is not just a matter of increasing the number of endpoints or the number of devices. There's a lot more work that needs to be done from a appliance or from a software perspective, because when you're increasing the number of sites or increasing the number of devices, there's a lot more things that happen. We have to make sure that the API access is supported as well along with it, because if I have 15,000 clients or if I have 100,000 clients, the number of API or the number of API calls per second is probably not going to be the same. So we need to make sure that we are able to support that as well. The number of virtual networks, the number of policies, the amount of data that we get back from the network devices in terms of SNMP, NetFlow, and all of that, that is going to increase drastically as well. So we need to look at all of those things when we have to increase scale. And I think we have done some research internally. We have close to 37 parameters that we take into account when we have to increase the scale. So it is work in progress, and we will continue to add more and more scale to the DNS Center. But as of now, we are looking at 3 different perspectives: appliance, giving you larger appliances, making sure that your DNS Center is able to integrate with other ecosystem servers, and also giving you scale with respect to DMS. Some of that is not here yet, but that's going to be available shortly. So HA. So with HA, as you know, you need 3 nodes to form an HA cluster. For automation, we have full support for automation HA. So if a service goes down and it's an automation service, it's going to reinstantiate itself. And it might take as much as 15 minutes, but that's the upper boundary. So within 15 minutes, you will see that service back up. So if a service goes down or a node goes down, you'll see that is going to come up automatically within 15 minutes on the other 2 nodes. So you will have, as I said, 3 nodes for an HA cluster, and we have a provision of one of those nodes going down. So those services which are there on the 3rd node will be reprovisioned on the other 2 nodes. It happens automatically. That's for automation. In the case of assurance, it is not automatic. So if the node that goes down is not running any of the assurance services, you'll see no impact with assurance. In case there is an impact, so if the node that goes down is also running the NDP or the assurance services, assurance will be impacted. You'll see a UI notification, and then you will have to perform some manual steps to recover those services. So that's the manual aspect with respect to the assurance high availability. So 2 different cases. For automation, it's going to be automatic, so full support for automation HA. For assurance, there might be a need for a manual recovery in case the node that goes down has assurance services running on them. And this is all supported from the 1.2.8 release onwards. The last thing on the system side is when we look at via DNS Center, it is a huge appliance, and it has a support for a large number of devices and endpoints. Now, for lab testing purposes of a proof of concepts or demos, you might not need that scale. So what we're doing is giving you an OVA for the DNS Center virtual machine, and with that, you can have it running as a virtual machine in your own lab for demos, for proof of concepts, or for doing your own testing. This is not for production deployments. This is just for demos and POCs only, and this will have full support as compared to what you have with the regular DNS Center appliance. except that we don't have support for high availability with this, right? So you cannot have 3 different VMs form a cluster and do your testing for HA. But apart from HA, everything else should be supported. So all of the automation features, assurance features, all of APIs, integrations, events, all of that is supported with this VM. Now, we are currently in the early field trials for this VM, so that is available right now, and we have multiple partners and customers who are doing the early field trials for this VM. We expect to go, FCS with this, with the 1.3 release. There is going to be a bit of a time lag after 1.3 is FCS. So once 1.3 is FCS, we expect around 4 weeks of a lag before we go FCS with the OVA, because once the 1.3 release is finalized, then we're actually going to do some work on the VM side. So that is 1.3 FCS, and early field trials is right now ongoing. So we talked about the base infrastructure on the DNS Center, how that works, and what are the key innovations that we're bringing. Now let's look at programmability. So DNS Center platform, this was launched as part of Cisco Live US in Orlando in 2018, back in June of last year. Since then, we have done the FCS for DNS Center platform as part of DNS Center 1.2.5. This was around October, and we have continued to add more and more features to it. So with respect to platform and programmability, we are really looking at it from 4 different aspects. One is the APIs. So we give you APIs that will allow you to access all of the workflows, all of the functionality that is there within DNS Center, and also a lot of the data that we have within DNS Center. That should all be accessible via the intent APIs that we have on DNS Center. Next is the integrations, because as we said earlier, DNS Center is not the only thing in the network. You have a lot of other systems like your IPAM systems, your ITSM systems, reporting systems, all of those systems, and we need to integrate the DNS Center with those systems. So we're looking at integrations, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. Also SDKs. So we plan to give you more and more SDKs for various functionality within the DNS Center. As of now, we have an SDK that will allow you to add support for third-party devices on DNS Center. So that is the device pack SDK that we have, and that gives you the ability to build a device pack for a unsupported device on the DNS Center. So that is already out there. I'll not talk about that in much more detail because we haven't added a whole lot of stuff to it in the last couple of releases, but that is something that's already out there, and we plan to add more and more functionality to it in the coming releases. And the last part is the developer enablement, right? Because we have APIs. Now we all want all of those APIs to be well documented for developers from your teams to be able to use those APIs. The documentation should be there. We should have SDKs, or we should have Python libraries. We should have Ansible playbooks, modules, all of that available. And for us, DevNet is our primary source for developer enablement. So if you go to the DevNet site, we have a portal for DNS Center. So it's developer.cisco.com/DNS Center. That is our portal for everything with respect to DNS Center platform. So you'll see the API documentation, you'll see code samples, you'll have sandboxes, learning labs, all of that is already out there. So with respect to the APIs, we have APIs for DNA assurance, and that includes giving you data for client health, device health, site health, and all of that. We have APIs for SDA. Now, SDA is just starting. SDA is a big feature, and we will have more and more APIs coming out. As of now, we just have some limited support for SDA APIs, but that is coming. So if you see in the coming releases, we'll add more and more APIs with respect to SDA, path trace, template editor, command runner, wireless provisioning, NFV provisioning, all of those APIs are already out there. Also the basic visibility APIs for inventory, discovery, topology, those APIs are out there. I mean, that has been there since the 1.2.5 release. Also APIs for plug and play, software image management, these are all there. Now again, we are continuing to add more and more APIs with every release. So if you're tracking that, you'll see in 1.2.5, we had a very limited release of APIs with our FCS. But since then, we have added a lot of new API sets, and you'll see that with 1.3, 1.4, we'll be adding more and more APIs. There was a question.
The requirements for the virtual appliance, any timeline on when those are going to be more realistic?
So I thought it was a question on APIs. But yeah, so we will work on bringing it down. For now, this was a big ask from our field, from a lot of partners, a lot of customers to get it out there. So we did that. So that's what we have done so far. But we will add or we'll make it more optimized in the coming releases. For now, that is the specs for the 1.3 release. So with respect to APIs, as I said earlier, all of those APIs are documented. So we have swaggered our documentation on DevNet. So on the platform portal on DevNet, that's already out there. And we have the sandboxes, the learning labs, and sample code all on DevNet. There are some code samples from partners such as yourself as well, and who have contributed those codes. We are working on releasing the Python library for our APIs. So those APIs or those libraries are in the works. We should have it out there shortly. Ansible modules and Ansible playbooks are also something that we're working on, and that should be available shortly in a couple of months. So those are the two things that is in flight, but that should be there out very soon. Now, the other aspect is events and notifications. So anything that happens on the DNS center, so with respect to the DNS center itself, so if one of the node goes down or one of the services has gone down, or if one of your PNP provisioning has failed, for example, or assurance has identified an issue with one of the endpoints or one of the devices going down, we need those notifications to happen. And those notifications needs to go out to an external system. So for that, we have 3 different ways of doing notifications using DNS Center. The first one is via webhooks. So that is our base kind of method. And using webhooks, this is very programmable. We will publish the full JSON on what is the schema of that notification, and that can be sent to any external REST endpoint. We are also adding support for email-based notifications. That is not there today, but that's something that we're looking to get shortly. And the last one is the integration with ServiceNow. So some of you might know we already have an integration with ServiceNow. This is an out-of-the-box integration. So anytime assurance or say software image management is going to identify any issue with the DNS, with the network or with the DNS center itself, you will be able to open a ticket on ServiceNow. And again, there is a closed loop remediation that we are working on. That's not there today, but that's something which is going to take it to the whole new next level where you're able to open a ticket, create a ticket. You can then go through the full workflow where you create a service request. You will then be able to use the APIs to go back to the DNS center and say, you know what, this ticket has been approved or this service request has been approved. And then now let's go and do the upgrade of the software device, for example. So those are some of the things that we're working on, but primarily we have 3 different ways of notifying about events. One is using webhooks. This is very programmable. You can use that webhooks. You can use the data in your or via your REST endpoints and then do a lot of things with that. Email-based notifications are coming, and then we already have the integration with ServiceNow. With respect to IT process system integrations, right? So we talked about ServiceNow. So that is one of the integrations that we have. We also have out-of-the-box integrations with some of the IPAM systems, such as Infoblox and BlueCat. And we also have an integration with Tableau. So that's not a full integration right now, but we are going towards the path, or we are on the path to make it a full integration with respect to reporting systems. So Tableau is our first partner that we are working with. Also, although we talk about the out-of-the-box integrations, which is already out there, the APIs, the events, the webhooks, these are all open. So if you want to build your own integrations, that is very much possible. And we are already working with a number of partners on that, ecosystems partners, ISVs, who can actually use these APIs to build their own integration. So for example, in the case of IPAM, we have integration with BlueCat and Infoblox out of the box. You don't have to do anything with that, right? Once you install DNS Center, you'll see an option to integrate with BlueCat or Infoblox, and you can get all of the benefits for that. But say if you're not using BlueCat or if you're not using Infoblox, what do? So this is where we have those APIs available for the IPAM integration. Now you can use those APIs and build your own integration. And one such partner, and this is Efficient IP, they are also an IPAM provider, and they have built that integration between DNS Center and their own system. So that is already out there. They have demoed this solution as part of Cisco Live or in Cisco Live Barcelona a couple of months back. And again, there is a play here for all of you partners to build more and more integrations such as the work that Efficient IP has done. Now, we have APIs for doing the CMDB sync. We have APIs for ITSM. So if you want to enrich some of the data for creating your own tickets, IPAM APIs I already talked about, event notifications, those are already out there. And for reporting, we have the data as a service methods. Right now, with respect to reporting, we have kind of limited reports. We will add more and more to that. But then the APIs can be used to build your own reports. And we have some partners who are already working on that as well. One quick note on the DNA app. So the ServiceNow integration that we have with DNA Center, that does require an app on ServiceNow itself. That app is already or has been out there for some time now. We have been working with a number of partners and customers on that. But recently, I think maybe a month back, this app was actually certified and is now there on the ServiceNow App Store. So if you go to the App Store, you'll see the Cisco DNA app. You can download that on your ServiceNow instance, and you will now get the full benefits of that integration. The integration between DNA Center and ServiceNow will still work without this app, but you don't get all of the event or the data enrichment and some of the other workflow benefits that you could get from this. But the app is there that gives you that. And again, the app is not absolutely required. You can do all of that work yourself because ServiceNow has APIs, DNA Center has APIs. So if you want to enhance the workflow or if you want to build your own workflow for your full ITSM process, because we understand it could be different for different companies, you can use those APIs and build your own integration. So we talked about the infrastructure. We talked about programmability and what we are doing with respect to programmability. And with respect to the partner ecosystem, it is not just that we are talking. We are already working with a number of partners. As I said, we did a launch for DNA Center platform in June of last year. And we worked with a number of partners. We have put some logos out here. Again, I might be missing some of these, some of our partners that we worked with. So I apologize for that. But there's a number of partners that we're working on. And I just put together a slide with some of the partners that we had showcased as part of Cisco Live Orlando. And post Cisco Live, post the launch, we have been continuing to work with a number of partners. And some of those partners are shown here. Or some of the partner logos are shown here. Again, we are working with a number of partners. We expect to work with more of you. So if you have any questions regarding APIs, events, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to engage. So now let's look at automation and how you are able to bring up your campus. So we looked at DNA Center as a whole, how we are able to bring up the DNA Center, what improvements we have done on the DNA Center itself, how you can integrate your apps or your systems with the DNA Center. And now let's look at automation-based innovations. So the first thing that you do is when you have to bring up a campus is to do the day zero onboarding of your network devices. Now we have the full workflow on DNA Center. That workflow is there, has support for all of the switches, access points, and we are adding more and more support to that. Now the whole basis for that is using sites. You're able to identify a golden image for your different device families. It could be based on device family or a device role. You're able to create your own network profiles where you can. This could be a wireless profile, a routing profile, a switch profile. You're able to add your own templates, and all of that could be then assigned to a site. So that is what is your full day zero automation workflow, where it is site-based. You have a site. Add the golden images to that, add the templates to that, add the network profile to that. And as soon as you have a device that comes up, that's going to it's going to come up, it's going to call home to the DNA Center via PNP, and it's going to be an unclaimed device. And when you add this device to the site, that's when that device is then going to inherit all of that other details. So all of the templates, the network profiles, the network settings, the golden images, all of that is then going to get provisioned on that device itself. So that's how we are doing day zero automation. As I said earlier, this support is there for all of your device families, so all of the switches, all of the access points, and it's also there for the wireless LAN controllers today. It's just that in the case of wireless LAN controller, you will need to do the manual discovery, but once you do that, all of that support is there for the wireless devices as well. So wireless controllers, access points, switches, they're all there today. Now, let's just do a double click on the 9800 wireless controllers. We have full feature parity with respect to the DNA Center for the 9800 controllers. So the 9800 controllers and the Air OS-based wireless controllers, they should have full support on the DNS Center. And this is there today in the 1.10 release, and we'll add some more other fixes in the 1.3 release, but that should be there today. So we have full feature parity with respect to DNS Center support for Air OS-based controllers and the 9800 controllers. And why am I saying that? We would highly recommend that you go with the 9800 for all of your future deployments, because that is going to make it easy. We have full support on DNS Center, and going forward, more and more innovations are going to be there for the 9800 controllers. And I'll talk about some of them later. But for example, plug and play, that is something that we're going to be adding support with the 9800 controllers shortly. It's not there today, but there are more features that will be added just on the 9800. Yes, yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, does that support include the 9800 virtual machines as well? So that was a day zero provisioning or onboarding of your network devices of your campus. What do you do next? You want to secure your network, and we have integration with ETA, and ETA and StealthWatch. So that support is, so today, if you had to do that, you had to go and manually configure those network devices. So all of the network configuration that needs to be done on the Cat9 case, that had to be done manually on those devices. It could take as long as 30 minutes per device. But we are going to add support for that on DNS Center, where you're able to now configure maybe around 20 devices in 5 minutes. So you have to decide what sites you want to provision. You are able to select a site, and all of the devices in that particular site will be provisioned with all the necessary config for ETA. Now again, some devices might not have full support for ETA. In that case, we'll only have support for network as a sensor. But again, all of that decision will be done by the DNS Center. So ETA configuration or network as a sensor configuration will be done by DNS Center on a side-by-side basis. And this will take care of all of the readiness checks, and also you will be able to review the configuration before we provision that configuration on the network device. So that's full integration with ETA workflows and for sending data back to StealthWatch. The other thing that we have support for day one automation is application policy. So for the QoS policies that you want to provision on your network devices, you can do that via DNS Center. This is the same application that we have or that we had on APKM, and we used to call it EasyQoS. This is pretty much the same application. In fact, we have much more functionality with application policy as compared to EasyQoS. But full feature parity, and then again, more and more features that we have added have come into application policy on DNS Center. So this has full support for your wireless devices, your switches, your routers. We have predefined CVD-based policies for application policy. And again, you can use those predefined policies or you can customize them. It's up to you. You can customize the policies by deciding which application goes into which bucket. You can customize the policies by defining your own queuing profile. We have a default CVD-based queuing profile, but we can change that as well. You can change the DHCP values for the different traffic classes. All of that support is there with application policy. The other good thing about this with application policy is you're able to preview the configuration and do a pre-check. So even before you apply the policies on the network devices, you can do a preview of that configuration, how it looks like, and do a pre-check just to see if this policy is going to succeed, because there might be some configuration on the network devices which might result in this policy being not configured appropriately. So all of that pre-check and previews can be done that. And the last thing about application policy is versioning. So we have a full history of the policy versions. So we can go back, any number of versions of the policy. So you can do your default policy or any number of policy, make some change that's going to be version 1 of the policy, make another change, version 2. And if you don't like it, you can go back to a previous version of the policy. In fact, we have full support for if you want to go back to the day 0 version of the policy where you have no policy from DNS Center, but you might have some brownfield QoS config, you can even go back to that. So that's the version 0 policy that we have on application, with application policy on DNS Center. That's all supported today with the DNS Center 1.10 release. So we have done the onboarding of the network devices. We have done the day one provisioning for application policies, for ETA, and now for day end workflows, we will have support for upgrades on those network devices. So that's the software image management upgrades. So that support is already there for switches and routers today, for the wireless controllers today, and we are adding support for ROM-on based upgrades as well. So if you want to go from a non-Polaris based images to a Polaris-based images, you might have to do a ROM-on upgrade in some cases. That support was not there so far on the DNS Center for SWIM. That is something which is coming in, I think, the 1.3 release, but I could be wrong on that. But I think that's something that we are working on and should be there shortly. We have already talked about the ITSM integration, because anytime you do any upgrades on the network device, you will need some kind of ITSM or service request management. So that ITSM integration is already there today. Default is with ServiceNow, but if you want to add more, or if you want to add other integration with other ITSM systems, that support is there via APIs, and you can build that. With respect to eliminating downtimes, we are bringing in support for rolling AP upgrades. So you will now be able to upgrade your wireless infrastructure without having any impact on your users. So that's the rolling AP upgrade feature that we are bringing in on the DNS Center, and that is a big feature. Again, that support is going to be there for the 9800 controllers only. So another feature where if you're going with the 9800 controllers, you will be able to see or get the benefits of this. We have the SMU-based upgrades on the switches. That's already out there. So as soon as we have hot patches available on the switches, you will be able to get full benefit of this, and that's going to ensure that you have zero downtime upgrades on the switches as well. So both for your switching and your wireless infrastructure, our goal is to give you a zero downtime upgrade, and we are working towards that. Rolling AP upgrades and SMU-based upgrades are both going to be coming soon. Actually, the SMU-based upgrades are already there. We're just waiting for a hot patch on the switching side. The last feature that I want to talk to you about is RMA. So today, when your device goes bad or Cisco TAC says, you know what, you will need to replace your device, and Cisco sends you a new device, you will have to do the upgrade. Now, that upgrade is a manual process where you might have to, catch, or you might have to grab the configuration of your existing device, apply the configuration on the new device, make sure it's running the same iOS software, has the same licenses, turned on that device. All of that has to be done manually. What we are doing today is bringing all of that support using DNS Center. So you will be able to select a device and say, this is a device that is going to be replaced with a certain new device. And that device, once you onboard on the DNS Center, it could be via PNP or via a manual discovery process. You can bring that device on DNS Center, and then you can swap, or you can actually say, this is my new device, and all of that configuration, all of that licenses will be provisioned on that new device. And this is not just looking at from a device perspective. It can also update all of the device profiles on ICE, for example. All of that will be done via the DNS Center RMA workflow. So let's do a very quick demo of this RMA workflow. Okay. So this is my DNS Center system, and if I go to the provision here, what you'll see is a list of devices, and I think this is also your first preview to the new UX for the DNS Center 1.3 builds. You'll see here this is the device inventory page, and this can actually be now filtered based on sites or device types. This is not there in the previous versions of DNS Center, but we are adding that now. And you can see here we have a list of devices, and maybe I'm going to select one of these devices and say this is going to be marked for replacement. So this is where I say this is the device that I'm going to replace, just gone bad, and I have got a new hardware from Cisco. I just need to upgrade that device, or I'm going to replace that device. So in this case, I take the device, mark it for replacement, and then if I go into a different view here, say marked for replacement. You can see there's just one switch because this is what I had marked for replacement. I'm going to take this and I'm going to replace this device. And this is going to take me to a workflow where it's now going to give me a list of all of the available devices. So these are the new devices that have been onboarded. And this could be two types of devices. It could be a managed device. So this is something which has already been onboarded on the DNA center. This could be via manual discovery of this device. Or it could be an unclaimed device where this device has come up and the plug and play process has kicked in and it has called home on the DNA center, and this device is sitting there in the unclaimed list. So let's take, for example, the managed device here, and this is the new switch, and I'm going to say next. So I have selected my older switch, which needs to be replaced. I've selected the new switch, which is the replacement device, and it gives me a summary like, here is the switch, here is a serial number of the older device, and the newer device, this is the name, and the serial number gives me the iOS image and gives me the type of license that is running on the device and all of that. And then we go next, and that's where you can, do the actual RMA process, where you can do it right now or you can do it later on. Either way works, and you can then go through the entire process. So that is a very quick demo of the RMA process. And let me just show you a quick history of how this looks like. So if I select this device, you can actually show you all the logs that we have for this particular device. So you can say, you can see the entire process, how it went through. It's going to distribute the software image on the replacement device, is going to activate the software image, deploy the licenses, deploy the VLAN configuration, startup configuration. So it takes the configuration, adds it to the startup configuration on the new device, and then it's going to reload the device. And you can see somewhere here, it's also going to update the Cisco ICE. So if you have a device profile there, you might have to make changes to the iOS version on that. That will all be taken care of by the DNA center. So that was a very quick demo of the RMA process. And so before we end, so we went through the entire process of DNA center, bring up what are the innovations we have done with respect to systems, high availability, VMs, and also with respect to automation innovations. The next process or the next step is to now look at your network and see how your network is behaving. So that's all the innovation, that there's a lot of it coming from a DNA assurance point of view. So let me call back Bipin on stage to talk us through DNA assurance.
Thanks, Saurabh. Did you like what Saurabh showed? A quick show of hands. Thank you. So far we've talked about scale. We've covered day 0 to N automation. We've shown how we are opening up the whole system towards external integrations. Now an important component is assurance. So all of the data that the campus of future sources, what does that lead us to? That helps us provide full stack visibility across from all the way from clients to applications. That is really the promise of Cisco DNA Assurance. Now, with client visibility, you get a good detailed view of all of the client onboarding details. Every single event for client onboarding is tracked via an onboarding event, which is received through streaming telemetry. Now, with Cisco DNA Center 1.2.10, which we just released in February, we covered an important addition to the assurance portfolio, which was wired assurance. Now, with wired assurance, you get near real-time device updates up to a polling intervals of just under a minute. And then this allows us to provide all of the standard dashboards like device and wired client 360s with all of the key connectivity KPIs. Now, when it comes to wireless visibility, where we are today, you've all heard of intelligent capture. Intelligent capture was a feature we launched way back in 1.2.5 as a beta. And at that time, its key use case was VIP client troubleshooting. So you could take a VIP client session, you start an RF packet capture, and you track the health of the client RF health and all of the other important events that are occurring there. Now, with DNA Center 1.3, what we will be doing is we are going to bring intelligent capture to production with a very important one addition, which is anomaly-based packet capture, which means that there's no manual network operator intervention required. The controller is going to detect an onboarding failure and automatically trigger off a packet capture from the access point. So that's the key innovation that we are very excited to bring to market as production quality in 1.3. Other than that, rogue detection, a key feature from the prime world. We are now finally getting to it. We are going to be starting an EFT for rogue detection in 1.3 as well. And all of the new hardware that you see or hear today, which is the next generation Catalyst stack, including the 9800 controllers and the 11AX stack is all supported in Cisco DNA Center Assurance as well. The 11AX specifically is going to be in 1.3. And then finally, we know that today we do provide application visibility, but you need to have app classification running on a router using NBAR2. It's been a long-standing ask to extend that ability to the switches and the wireless controllers. So this is going to happen this year. It is a roadmap item. We are actively working on it. So we'll close that gap when it comes to application visibility. Now, most of the issues in Cisco DNA Assurance today are based on static rules and definitions. Now, these static rules, they work well for quite a number of use cases. But recently, there was market feedback to be able to have the ability to customize these. So with 1.2.10, as some of you might know, we actually added the ability to be able to define your own KPIs and thresholds and provide issue customization, and also the ability to suppress or ignore certain issues. But there are certain kind of use cases, especially client onboarding, which probably can get more accurate and get you more relevant issues if you were to use the power of dynamic thresholding and machine learning. Now, that is what we are fairly excited to share with you today. This is an innovation that we are working on right now. Again, you're going to hear more about it in the near future and actually see it working in the code in the near future. But we wanted to table it here so you all walk away excited that we are bringing the power of machine learning in the cloud and evolving our models and applying that to DNA assurance. So let's go back to that use case of the client troubleshooting. Client onboarding. Now, client onboarding is something that you will not be able to get good data if you were to just use a static threshold. Why? Because per SSID, it will keep changing. So you cannot have a static rule or a static threshold that defines what is normal for your network. Per SSID, there are going to be differences based on authentication types, based on throughput, based on a lot of other client details. So what you really need is to take all this information with the right context of the network, feed it into a cloud-based model, and then let that model evolve and learn over time what the normal is for your what a normal client onboarding time is for your environment. So that's why we bring in the power of machine learning, and we use the power of anomaly-based model detection, or rather model-based anomaly detection, to providing more relevant and accurate issues, which ultimately reduces the noise. You also can use the same model-based approach towards troubleshooting, because now when I'm providing you information on remediation, I'm just not talking of the KPIs under question, but I'm also providing you back the context with the entire thing, which means that you can have more granular KPIs now to look at and then be able to troubleshoot and root cause analysis problem faster. I'm going to not have too many slides on this. I'm going to invite Min-Se Kim, our senior TME for wireless assurance. He's going to actually show you some of these innovations in practice in a demo.
All right. Thanks, Vipin. All right, let's have demo time. So in DNA assurance, I think that since last 1.2.10 toward 1.3, we had almost about 100 new features. It's like a 3-digit new feature. So I had to cherry pick the specific demo scenario that I really can impress you. So I brought some of the interesting scenario with regard to client onboarding, which just Vipin talked about. When you talk about client onboarding, we found that there are lots of elements that involved. There's a client side of a perspective, server side of perspective, network side of perspective, drivers, versions, firmware, environment, RF. So although it looks like a simple problem, I have a few clients that is dropping from my network. When you try to troubleshoot the symptom, it's really not an easy solution. First, we have to find out if that is a normal condition or some abnormal condition. So here's the client's health dashboard that we launched in 1.2.5. And then it's this new view. We create this top mid-level dashboard in 1.2.10. So what's the mid-level dashboard? Mid-level dashboard is give you the ability to zoom in and categorize top 5 specific characteristics of this group of user, such as if let's say that I choose this good client. By the way, if I click it, then a whole selection turn into blue, so you can easily find out the 1-3 feature. So I can find out which location that I have a more success or failure, and if I have a failure, which AP is mostly failing. So we can zoom into my problem zone into 1 or 2 AP that we can take action. And then we can provide a type of application, type of OS, which OS is more failing than others, right? Which SSID is failing more than others, right? All these type of information, top 5 visibility, allow us to zoom in and discover. These are all discovery exercise, right? If I click any of this information, in fact, it works as a filter. So what we learned from the Lorenz session, in Marrakech session, right? If we do not engage with the customer from the dashboard, they will probably lose interest on the subscription and lose interest on the overall analytic value, right? So what's the best way to interact with the customer? Make the dashboard to be interactive and actionable in every single pages. So every chart that we have in the DNA assurance, every graph that what we have is all actionable, it's interactive. I'll give an example. Let's say that I want to have some filter. Let's say that I'm seeing a bunch of SSID, 7 SSID, all that. So let's check out, zoom in to a particular SSID, which is a corporate SSID. All right. Now my view is a corporate SSID. And seeing a different hash pages, because the trend is different. Of course, I can change my view, like if my threshold is much higher, oh yeah, 100%. If I don't have 100% success, then I need to get some visual alarm, right? You see that things are changed to red. And what we learned from, the VPN, right? We learned that, it's not wrong, it should be new, right? When you talk about the onboarding, there's always a few little rotten egg, right? We do not have 100% of success rate all the time. Then do we really need to take action with the 1 or 2 clients? We probably need to know the baseline. What is my expected behavior? So I can see all zoom in and I can check out. But if you check this out, there's always certain types of a client who is a red. Point is, find out right baselining, right? If you see this, there is the darker darker blue, which is a current client's movement from the hash score point of view, from the onboarding success point of view. And there is a little lighter blue, which is a predictive zone, which means that if my onboarding is moving within this predictive zone, it's still normal condition. I don't need to jump up from the chairs or anywhere because this is normal. Then there's always case that normal, even though it's a normal client, there's 1 or 2 clients might give us some, the hard time. Okay, means that I know that you're always saying that your Wi-Fi is perfect, but you know what? My experience is not that great. Why don't you check out my symptoms and wait a minute, let me. Why don't you give me some data? I will remove this chart and then now, okay. Let's see what I can see from here. All right. Okay, let me have some confess moment. I'm using 1.3. In fact, this is the first time that I'm showing you 1.3 outside of Cisco. But partner, you guys are our friends, our family. So I brought the 1.3 release, which is not available this month, but next month. So little bit of hiccups. I guess you understand it. So now I'm seeing 5 clients failing. Scroll down. These are the clients who is failing right now, failing to onboard. These are the sensors. So sensor is always associate, de-associated. So it's 1 is fine. But these 2 devices doesn't seem right. I have a red things. Onboarding health is red. So this is probably the guy who might have a bad day today, right? So we can wait for these guys to make a phone call to us and waiting for us to having an interesting morning. But we also can explore, all right? The entire dashboard is an interactive diagnose and discover. Check this out. No wonder, right? I have a bunch of the authentication failure. Authentication failing all the time. So what is going on is that if ID timeout. Yeah. You know why if ID timeout is happening? This is a case where the server, when rogue AAA server or rogue AP had it discovered on the network, anytime we have a new rogue AP, client tried to join that AP and found that certificate is exchanged. The certificate replaced to the others, so they refused to join. So some devices blacklisted AP, like iPhone and all those devices, but some device doesn't blacklist that devices. It just keeps trying and trying and trying. That's why I'm seeing a continuum of if ID failure. By the way, when you look at this chart, anyone have seen this as a little familiar? I mean, so I'll give this is a confess moment. I mean, it's not a confess, it's actually a good, I think I really want to break this because last year we had a partner VT, and I had a quick survey that who wants to have a heat map with a proper coloring, which is a green as a good, red as a bad. And actually we had, I think, remember, right? So we had this survey, and more than half of the attendees told me that we want to see the red as a bad, not the red as a hot. So I told this to my engineering and asked him to fix it. So we introduced the new natural heat map. So in this natural heat map, green is good, red is bad. Oh, thank you. You can always go back to the legacy old because somebody doesn't want to listen in, then they can follow that too. So here's a client RF statistic. By the way, all these statistics, I have not touched anything on the configuration. All these clients has not been configured or pre-scheduled. That was one of the tricks that we always had to do. I mean, let me be confident. I always, have a one or two clients. I pre-schedule it, and then make the client to make sure that this client failed to join, and I show it as a demo. We always do that in the intelligent capture demo of 1.2. In 1.3, that is no longer the case because every single onboarding failure, you will have a PCAP. Of course, I give you the whole freedom. You can selectively turn on the anomaly PCAP per AP by AP basis, or you can globally turn it on. DNA assurance have a scalability to support all the clients in the network to have an anomaly PCAP. All right? Let me just launch it again because for some reason, maybe because there's too many onboarding failures happening, this page is not loading because this is a quite interesting, exciting aspect. So I want you to show you that the list of the onboarding events. And then another feedback that I received was a little bit of this complexity between the full packet captures and all the other. I mean, it's almost like I need to have a 4800 all the time to learn the intelligent capture. In fact, it's not. So we actually made the button a little differently. So the blue button can be turned on any devices, like a 2800, 3800, also support live capture. You can click the live capture button and then enable the live tracking. So what's the difference between the live tracking and the regular tracking? In regular tracking, client RF state comes in every 30 seconds. 30 seconds, and onboarding event can happen every 5 to 6 minutes delayed fashion because we have to go through the multiple pipeline and data storages, and we code it from NDP. So that took a little more time to display. So what we did was we enabled the live capture button. In the live capture, screen get updated every 5 seconds, location updated every 4-5 seconds. Similarly, onboarding event also updated at every few seconds. So it's almost as if you are in the customer site and checking it, client onboarding in real time with the client. We don't need to dispatch anyone. You will just getting it by and turning on this feature. And as I said, I don't need to pre-schedule anything. Just one click button, then you will have the information. Yep. Yeah, there's one interesting things going on, but yep. Sure.
Just go back to the slide.
Yep. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
You've seen a fair amount of detail today. The idea was really to come up to this point, but unfortunately we are running out of time. But the thing I want to highlight is, now this was a slide the last I used was on April Fool's Day, but it is not an April Fool's joke. This is for real. So if you look at the entire new hardware that we are talking about in this VT, which is the new Campus of the Future hardware, the Catalyst 9000, the 9800, the 11AX stack, and all of that. And if you look at all the features we've talked to so far, with key features like rolling AP upgrades or rogue detection in the works right now, and also new innovations like intelligent capture or machine learning, that is only going to be available with DNS Center on the new Campus of the Future infrastructure, we are actually closing the gaps with Prime. So this year, in the next 6 months or so, I think is a time really to start taking your customers off Prime and using DNS Center for Campus of the Future in an iOS XE-based environment. We can take more questions on this a little later. And then just to tie it all together for you, I think the key important aspect is the platform and APIs that you should totally leverage to sell more value-added services to your customers. Lead with DNS Center for Campus of the Future. We have quite a few resources for you. The top and the bottom one are the most important. The top one is Sales Connect, which has all of the collateral, including the own TDM decks that we internally use, are all available for you. And the last link on the slide is actually a partner community page that we launched last November at the Partner Summit. It also takes you into a partner community where you can ask questions, and all of the content on this is kept totally up to date with all the latest releases. So happy selling with DNS Center. Be happy to take any more questions. We'll be around the room. Sorry, we ran out of time. Do we have any questions or any time for any questions?
While the next guys are getting mic'd up, any questions? If not, we can take it offline. Obviously, we have a number of DNA Center platform, API, scale, etc. sessions throughout the week. But anything top of mind anyone wants to ask, or if not, we're going to take a break until 10 till. So give everyone 15 minutes, and then we will go into Campus of the Future Part 2. So round of applause for the team.
Thank you.